Hey there, welcome back to the class for O-level computer sciences. And in this class, we are going to proceed with the next topic that we have. I believe that since the last of the classes, I have discussed with you that what is a user-defined data types. There are two types of user-defined data types that I have right here. That is a composite and a non-composite data type. And what are the further categories of these? How they are used. We have completed all of this since our last classes, and you also have completed your activities and shared it with me. So, just in case if you haven't done that, I suggest you to complete those and share back those to me so that we all can work together. So, for today's class, what we are going to start is basically 13.2 because 13.1 is completed. So we are going to discuss here 13.2, which is file organization and access. This is going to be the topic for today's class, and basically in in this, what I'm going to discuss with you is that this is our syllabus learning objective that I discussed to share with you that I need to show understanding of the methods of file organization. I need to show understanding of the methods of file organization and select an appropriate method of file organization and file access for a given problem. So, in this topic, we are going to discuss some areas of file organizations that I mean, how files are organized, right? Like, for example, if I gave you a scenario and you need to test or you need to tell me that which type of file organization method should be used in this scenario. File organization basically means that how you organizes all of your files. We do have right here the file organization which says that if it is equal either a serial, a sequential, or a random file. This is what we are going to discuss in today's class. So moving on, some of the keywords that we will be discussing are going to be right here. That is a serial, sequential, key field, random, record key, sequential access, direct access, and hashing. We will be discussing these with you. As far as file organizations are considered, I can discuss this with all of you that right, like in every day of our computer usages, we do have a wide variety of file types that we encountered, right? That means that from day to day or on everyday basis, I encounter different types of file formats, and some examples of those are either if it's a graphics file, either if it's a word processing file, or either if it's an spreadsheet. But whatever the file type, the content is always stored using a specific binary code that basically allows the file to be used as intended. Or in other words, you can say that it is always stored in the form of binary because binary is only the language that is understandable by a computer. So, for your specific tasks of storing data to be used for input to a computer program or for generating an output from a computer program, we use these files that are basically stored in this way. So if I just introduce you this term that what is the meaning of a file organization or what you can understand from it. So I can say that basically a file organization refers to the method that is used to arrange data in a file, ensuring efficient data retrieval and management. That means that if I want you to sort out a file, if I want you to organize a file, so you are going to use the same area, which is file organization. And what you are going to do is that you are going to see yourself, you are going to test it out yourself that how are you going to arrange that data, right? But it should be in a manner that helps you to retrieve that data easily, to manage that data easily. So why do you think that file organization is important? It is important because it basically improves your data access speed. That means that your data can be accessed at a much faster rate. It also facilitates efficient storage management. Efficient storage management basically means that in which folder or in which of the places those files are kept, right? So if you are managing it even more properly, it is helping you to organize them. For example, if I teach grade 9, 10, 11, and 12 computer sciences, so that means that I have four folders into my computer. Four folders basically means that I will be having four different PowerPoint presentations as well, just to tell you that it is properly organized. The third point says that you can maintain data integrity and consistency. Data integrity and consistency means to make sure that if you have a consistent data, to make sure that your data is properly aligned with it. And some of the examples of that are like, for example, you are organizing a library catalog efficiently. So basically it's going to be totally up to you that how you are going to organize that. So this concept, right, let me take you right here on our book, page number this is on page number 317. I'm just introducing you this area, which is file organizations, right? Like we have already discussed that we encounter different types of files, and whatever the file type, the content is stored using a specific binary code because it allows the files to be used as intended. And for the specific task of storing data, it has to be input for a computer program or for output from a computer program. There are two types, right? Which is a binary file, or which is a record file. So basically, if you are using a binary file is basically designed for storing data to be used by a computer program. Whereas if you are referring to a record is like a collection of fields that is containing the data values. I'm going to cover both of these points right into the PowerPoint as well, but I just first of all wanted to give you an overview that what is file organization is. So let's get ahead with that. Now, show understanding of the methods of file organization and select appropriate methods of file organization and file access for a given problem. Yes, as I was notifying you early into my lecture that if you want to store data that has to be used by a computer, there are two ways in which you can store that data. One way is definitely to be known as a text file, and the other way is definitely to be noted as a binary file. So, whenever you wish to store data into a computer, you have two ways, either a text file, either a binary file. And what is a binary file? A binary file is basically a file designed for storing data that is used by the computer. Whereas when it's a record, it means that it is a collection of fields or connecting some values. I can also discuss right here with you that basically the organization of a binary file is based on the concept of record, right? I hope that you understand by the meaning of a record. A file contains record, and each record contains fields. Each field consists of values. For a text file, the number of data items per line must be known, and the number of characters items must be known. If these are not known, then items characters must be used separated. The file has repeating lines which are defined by the lines of character. So this is just referring to you that if you want to store a file, there are two ways. Either you can store it into a record, but if you are going to have a record, that means that it should be containing some number of fields, and if it is containing some number of fields, that means it must be containing some number of values. So let me create it right here. Basically, if you want to have the concept of a record, right? A record means that you will be having some number of fields, and if you have some those number of fields, that means that you have some number of values. And basically for a text file that has some number of values, so it should be mandatory that you know that what are the number of characters, what is the line number, what is the file that is being used. So this is basically your record part. Whereas if I am referring to a binary file, so a program may create a binary file as an output as well, with the intention of subsequently using it for the input. So you can also use a binary file, and you can use it for storing data for the internal representation. Internal representation means the representation that which the computer system only understands. You all know that the computer understands the language of binary. So it might be using this way to store the fields, to store the data. So let me now take you back right here. So this is it. Let me just give you a recap of what I have already discussed with you. First of all, I discussed with you that what is a file organization. Um, File organization is basically refers to the method that is used for arranging data into a file, ensuring efficient data retrieval and management. I have some important points of that as well. And basically to store the data, I have two important areas. One is going to be considered as a text file, and the other one is going to be considered as a binary one. So basically, if it is a text file, you must be understanding that a text file always contains data according to a defined character code. And defined character code in computer system, I have two. That is one of that is an ASCII2 code, and the other one is to be known as a Unicode. You know it already that these are the encoding methods, and if I have an ASCII2 code that basically represents American Standard Code for Information Interchange, it has the characters from 0 till 127. It represents the language that I used in my everyday life, all of the English words, but somehow it is limited to some extent. That means that if I wish to use a Chinese language, if I wish to use a Western language, then I need to use a Unicode. So text file, the basic meaning of that is that it is storing your data according to a defined character code, right? Like for example, a text file can be created using a text editor like this. So this is for your text part. The other area is basically a binary file. So I just discussed with you just right here that if it is a binary file, it means that you are storing the values of your internal representation of a computer. So binary files are basically designed for storing data to be used by the computer, and used by the computer programs, that it basically consists of either zeros and ones, right? So binary file is basically a file that is designed for storing data that is to be used by the computer only for the internal representation. And since it's binary, that means that it should be only be using zeros and ones. Other than that, it stores data in its internal representation. That means that an integer value might be stored in a 2 bytes in 2's complement representation to represent a negative number, right? We have already discussed this in AS level, that integers consist of two values, right? Let me give you a recap. Integers consist of two values. One is positive, one is negative. I have already discussed with you that if you want to convert the positive denary into binary, you can do it, right? And so on. But if you wish to convert the negative terms, then you need to use the help of one's complement, two's complement. Here is the same point written here, that if your data is being stored as an internal representation, and an integer value might be stored in 2 bytes in two's complement representation. Because why two's complement? Because it is the only method that is used to represent a negative number. The file is created using a specific program, and its organization is based on records, right? I have just discussed with you. So let me take you back right here. And again, for your understanding, I'm going to copy paste this area right into your MS Teams as well. So it's quite understandable to you. So for a binary file, it is a file that is designed for storing data to be used by a computer. Records is basically a collection of fields. Records is done, binary is done. Both of them are basically a way to save your computer programs. So just after that, now we need to move on to the actual way that how I can organize my files. Right now, I was only discussing with you the terms that how they are saved. So they can be saved in two of the areas, but now we are going to discuss these areas. So now I need to understand you that show understanding of the methods of file access. Now till here it is clear that what is a file access and in how many ways that file is actually can be stored, but we are not sure that what are the methods of access. So the methods of access that are right here are basically two as per our syllabus. One method is going to be serial, the other one is going to be sequential. So for example, if I am referring to a serial file access, that means that basically an index is created for each record in the file, similar to the index in a book, right? Like for example, if you're going to open your computer science books, you are going to find out that in terms of a serial file, in terms of an index file, you are going to find your topics, you are going to find your chapters with a page number, right? That on this page number you have this chapter, on this page number you have this topic. So this is basically a serial one. Your every chapter, your every topic is given a unique page number. That unique page number is a unique serial. So what can be the advantages of that? This a serial file. The first advantage is that it provides you with a faster data retrieval. It supports both sequential and random access. What can be the some disadvantages of that? Some disadvantages are that additional storage needed for indexing. You will be requested to use additional storage that is needed for indexing, and it is also complex to maintain with frequent insertion or deletions. So if you are indexing a file, that basically means that additional storage may be needed because you are basically preparing everything serial wise. But right into that serial, if you have managed all of your files, but suddenly you inserted some of the files or you deleted some of the files, so this is going to create complex problems for you. So that was the basic concept in terms of a serial file. If I take this to one step ahead, serial files are basically the files that contains records that have no defined order. It is basically a text file, maybe a serial file, where the file has repeating lines which are defined by an end of characters. A serial file always has a record in in a serial file that must have defined format to allow data to be input and output correctly, and it can be used to access a specific record. Oh, okay, so let's go through it once again. First point says that if it is basically a serial file, it is going to contain records that have no defined order. Now, I'm not referring to the serial number of that. I'm referring to a defined order, a defined pattern. So, into a serial file, it is not important that all records should be into a defined order. If you have a text file can also be considered as a serial file where the files has repeating number of lines which are defined by the end of the character. So it is not basically an obligation that if you have a different data type, that is going to be a serial. Even if it is going to be a text file, it can be considered a serial file as well. And just in case, even if you have repeating lines, it can also be considered a serial file. The third point states that a record in a serial file must have a defined format to allow data to be input and correctly. Yes, a record in a serial file. For example, I gave you an example of a record. Student name, student father name, age, school, subject. Do you agree that these five areas is a defined format? Now, try to understand my point clearly that a serial file should must as a record in a serial file should must be having a defined format to allow the data to be inputted and outputted. But it is not important that it should have a defined order, right? Then the fourth point is that to access a specific record, it has to go through every record until found. Yes. For example, if you have records and those records are, for example, 1 till 100, and you are basically searching for a record that has the student name as John. So what it has to do is that it is going to go through all the number of records from 1 to 100 and is going to find that item. And it is going to keeps on going on to that again and again until you have found so. Then file access. This is a successively read record by read until the data required is found. Thus, very slow. The file accessibility. File accessibility basically means that how faster you are able to access your file. So file access is basically slow in serial file, because if you are searching a specific file into your serials of 100, so what it is going to do, it is going to search out for all of the items. So this is why it is slow. Now, just after the serial file, the next concept I have is basically of a sequential file. So first of all, I'm going to give you the basic concept of a sequential file, that what is it. So first of all, a sequential file. In this, data is stored in a sequential manner, one after another. Data is stored in a sequential manner, one after another. That means that you don't have a serial. You have a certain sequential manner in which your data is being stored. What are the advantages of that? The first advantage that it is simple to implement. It has efficient for larger volumes of sequential data processing. What are the disadvantages of that? The first disadvantage is that it is slow for random access. It has insertion and deletion operations are complex. For example, a payroll processing system. So if it's in a sequential system, it is slow because it is randomly accessed. The insertion and deletion operations can be complex. However, it is simple to implement. It is efficient for larger volumes. That was the basic concept. But if it is a sequential file, it has records that are ordered and is suited for long-term storage of data, and is also considered as they are an alternative to database. That means that first of all of the records are ordered. They are suited and used when you want to have a permanent long-term storage of data. For example, you are forecasting your next 5 to 10 years when you want to store your data permanently. And this is also considered an alternative to database. I hope that all of you are quite aware with the term database. That is basically a combination of all of the data at one place. And what potential or what advantage do the database gives you? It basically gives you the ability to extract or filter out your data into a way that you want. So if it's a sequential file, that means that it has records that can be ordered. It is suited for longer storage time of data. It can be also be used as an alternative to database as well. Other than that, sequential file, a key field is required for a sequential file to be ordered, for which the values are unique and sequential. So a key field can be used that is required for sequential file to be ordered, for which the values are unique and essential. I'm not going to take here the example of a serial file where every file of you is going to be serially segregated, right? Like number one, number two, number three. Now for sequential files, you have a key field that is required for your ordering, right? Like that, it depends on you that how you want to order it, but it has to be a unique and into a sequential form. This way it can be easily accessed. So if it's in a sequence, so it can be easily accessed. That means that if which element I want to access, I can access that directly. I do not need to access all of those 100 elements again and again, and I need to access that. So a sequential database file is more efficient than a text file due to its data integrity, data privacy, and less data redundancy. Data integrity means that how safer your data is, how accurate your data is, how much you can rely on that data. Privacy basically means that how much protected is your data. Data redundancy is a term that is used to define that if your data is duplicated or not. However, when it comes to a sequential file, a change in one file would update any other files affected. For example, if you are changing the marks of some students in a sequential file, do you think is it going to impact the grades? Yes, definitely. If the marks are out of 50 or 100, if the marks are higher, so your grade is going to be much higher. If they are going to be low, you are not going to get that distinctive grade. Primary keys from the DBMS needs to be unique. That means that if you are taking your data from a database, DBMS stands for Database Management System. So if you are taking the primary key from the DBMS, first of all, it has to be unique, but not ordered. Unlike the key field from sequential file, which needs to be ordered and unique. A particular record is found by sequentially reading the value of the key field until the required value is found. And some examples are indexed and sequential file. So let me give you a recap of this. Then I'm going to take you into another resource and I'm going to teach you the same. I just keeps on reinforcing these areas again and again. So it's totally clear to you. And just in case, even if you have any query, you can ask. Our syllabus said that we need to discuss here these areas. I need to show you understanding of the methods of file organization. I taught you that what is a file organization. Then I discussed with you what are the appropriate methods of file organization, and those includes serial, sequential, and random. So I discussed with you that what is a file organization. I gave you the concept. I told you the importance and examples of that. Then I discussed with you that if you want to store the data that has to be used by a computer program, it is only stored in two of the files, either a binary or either a text. Then I discussed with you that if it is a text file, then it must be having data that is going to be stored by a defined character coding, and it could be an ASCII2 code or Unicode. If it's a binary file, this is an internal representation of the data. That was their file organizations file that was basically your this file organization. Now for the methods of that, I have for the methods of file accessibility, the first method I have is a serial file. I discussed with you that it is basically an index created for each record in a file. And then I discussed all of these pointers with you, and then so on. I discussed with the sequential files with you. So for making it even more clear, let's discuss the areas that we have given into our book, so that I should make sure that each and everything is quite clear to you. So the first area is regarding a serial file. We have covered it almost that a serial file contains records that have not been organized in any defined order. The first point says that it has no defined order. The second point says that a typical use of a serial file would be for a bank to record transactions in involving customer accounts. A serial file. You understand? Like for example, if you are making transactions into your account with the help of either of your debit card, so you can see that if in a day you are making multiple transactions, so they are going to be recorded into your account statement serially, right? Like the transactions that I made yesterday and the transactions I made today, they are going to be stored in a serial order, like which transaction comes first. Each time there was a withdrawal or a deposit or withdrawal or deposit, the program would receive the details as input and would record the data in a transaction file. Yes. And in a serial file, each new record is simply appended to the file, so that the only ordering in the file is the is the same as the time of data entry. That means that if a new record is being appended, so the only ordering in the file is the time and the order of data. That means that it is basically making both of the files same. In a serial file, each record is simply appended to the file. So the only ordering in the file is the time order of date entry, so that it keeps on updating itself with again and again. So I hope I am clear. If you have any queries, you can ask to me. So these are some of the points of serial file. As far as sequential file is concerned, a sequential file has basically records that are ordered, right? In the bank example, a sequential file could be used as basically a master file or for an individual customer account. At a regular periods of time, the transaction file would be read and all affected customers master file would be updated, right? That means that in a sequential file, you are updating your files accordingly. In order to allow a sequential file to be ordered, this has to be a key field. I explained to you into this PowerPoint, and that key field has to be a unique and sequential, but not necessarily consecutive. And basically, when a new record is added to a sequential file, it would be possible to append the record with the intention of sorting it later. So this is it for the sequential file. As far as we have a direct access file, we are going to cover it into the next lecture. So this is it for today. And basically, if it's a serial file, that means that serial files are basically designed to be read and recorded by a record, right? Like in serial file, your data is not necessarily organized, but it can be used to append it to sequentially in real time, and therefore sometimes it could be chronological in an order. But when it comes to a sequential files have to be read into the order in which they are already in. So we have already discussed the pointers for that. This is it for today. I am attaching some support material for this. So just in case if you have any queries within both of the areas, you can compare them. I'm also giving you a question with them so you can read it and you can develop your own pointers and then you can get back to me. So this is it for today. Thank you so much, everyone.